Before I get into my review of The Outer Worlds 2, I do just need to start by saying that I pray that the version of the game that you will be playing is much more polished than what I've been playing, because it has been quite riddled with bugs and other issues that I'll talk about later. However, that being said, The Outer Worlds 2 has been an absolute blast to play and review. It improves on the first in every single way, and if you are a fan of an open world RPG, in my opinion, this is a no-brainer. So let's talk about all of the highlights and lowlights to help you decide if you want to pick it up for yourself. And please note as well that the developers have been amazing throughout the review period, taking on all feedback very seriously and implementing many hotfixes already. So I'm hopeful that the only few negatives that I am going to be talking about aren't even in the game for you. As always, my friends, chapters will be timestamped down below so you can jump to the section that you specifically care about if you like. But for everyone else, let's start by talking about the RPG elements, as that's the bread and butter of The Outer Worlds 2, and I imagine the reason that most people are playing. As I say, the RPG is strong with this one. Build variety is going to be insane. Just to name a few of the core systems that you'll be engaging with, there are 6 backgrounds, 9 positive traits, 3 negative traits, 12 skills, over 100 perks, and more than 20 flaws. And I will dive into these systems specifically now, because depending on where you choose to spend your points, this will dramatically affect your entire playthrough, from the way you interact with the world around you, to the characters and NPCs that live and die. Firstly, your background is probably the most minor choice. It will unlock a couple of different dialogue options, and it will also unlock interaction with a few things around the world. You can kind of view this as another skill, like some situations where you'll be able to use like science or engineering, you might be able to use your background perk instead. But this isn't to say that you should write it off. This is still quite important, depending on the type of playthrough that you want to go for. Next up, you have your traits. As I say, there are 9 possible positive traits. You can pick just one if you want, and then you'll go straight over onto the skills, or you can pick 2, in which case you will have to pick a negative trait as well to offset just how awesome you are. And I will have a video coming out in a day or so of all of the best backgrounds, traits and skills, etc. that I think you should pick. So make sure you're subscribed and make sure you check that out. I really want to waffle on about it now. My guide brain is kicking in and I'm trying to tell you the most efficient traits that you should use. That's not the purpose of a review. That's just pointless to talk about now. So, sorry, let me move on. Next up, you also have 12 skills. Now, each skill can be maxed out at level 20, and every level you will gain 2 skill points to put into a category of your choosing. So you could put 1 point into lockpicking and 1 point into hacking, or 2 points into science. So bearing in mind you can only get to level 30 and you get 2 points per level, meaning a maximum of 60 points plus your 4 starting bonus points. Now, there are technically ways to get more points, but let's just assume you only have these 64 points because that is the bare minimum. That means you can only max out 3 of the 12 skills. And that's why I say build variety in this game is going to go insane, because you really don't want to be a jack of all trades in this game. Just getting every skill to like 5 or 6 is going to be so pointless in the end game, and you are going to suck. So you really need to try and lock in the skills that are the most important to you early on in the game and only focus on, I'd say, 5 max. And because of that, every single person that plays this game is going to have an entirely different experience to the last person. And I'll give you a few examples when I move into the gameplay section. Honestly, this is the area of the game that makes me the most excited, is the level of variety and choice that the developers give you. Then, as I say, there's also over 100 perks. There's around 90 standard perks and then a bunch of hidden ones you can get for completing certain hidden activities throughout the world as well. And they are going to synergize with whatever skills you've been pumping, and they're going to take your build to the next level. And then my personal favorite system in the game is floors. Now, from memory, floors work exactly the same as they did in the Outer Worlds, but they are even more varied and they are even more fun. Just to give you one example, I am someone who obsessively reloads my gun. I will shoot one bullet, I will headshot one enemy, combat over, reload. And because of that, the game picked up on it. And it was like the Earth Directorate has noticed that you are an over-preparer and you reload your weapon so unnecessarily often. So you can now choose to accept this flaw. You gain plus 50% magazine size, but if you ever let your gun run out of ammo, you will deal less damage for the next 10 seconds. And this is the kind of trade-off you'll get with flaws throughout the game. It learns your playstyle. If you are someone who obsessively steals everything, you can get the kleptomaniac flaw. If you are someone who always eats everything, you can get the glutton flaw. If you are someone who never engages with any of the science and any of the gadgets, you can get the Luddite flaw. So flaws will allow you to really hone in on the build that you're going for, whether you realize that's what you're going for or not. Like, I felt very called out when my first flaw popped up and it said, "You've just unlocked easily distracted." I was like, oh god, this game knows me far too well. And obviously you don't have to accept these flaws, but some of them have crazy powerful trade-offs. And for that reason, alongside my usual guides and tips and tricks videos, I am going to be doing a challenge run on this channel, so make sure you stay tuned for that, where I play on maximum difficulty, and the restriction is, the challenge is, I have to take every single flaw. I have to become the most flawed mess of a human you have ever seen, and still try and beat the game on the hardest difficulty. So stay tuned for part 1 of that coming very, very soon. Now that I've covered the main RPG mechanics, the core systems that make up your build, there are still so many more systems that make up this game that I wanted to talk to you about, such as the combat, the world itself, the characters, the story. But first, let me next talk about the game length. So my first playthrough took me around 30 hours to beat, and please do note that I skipped a lot of the dialogue. So much so that I actually unlocked a flaw, calling me out on my lack of reading. And it literally was like, right, for the rest of the game, if you want, you can have like plus 15% XP gains, but you now only have 4 seconds to choose an answer, or an answer will be randomly chosen for you because you clearly have 0 bloody attention span. And those close to me in my Discord community are sure to have a chuckle at my expense after learning of this information. But sorry, I digress. So as I say, my first playthrough took me 30 hours to beat, and I skipped a lot of the dialogue, and that was with me doing the majority of the side content, but not all of it. So I feel like the average person is probably going to take somewhere between 30 to 35 hours to finish the game. However, if you do listen to every conversation and complete every side quest, it's going to be closer to 40 to 45 hours. For me, I think this is the perfect length. I am someone who loves a 100-hour game, but I appreciate I'm in the minority. Not many people have the time nowadays to be able to do that. So 35 to 40 hours, I think, is a really good time commitment to allow you to fully enjoy the game without it being full of needless fluff and without it taking up too much of your precious time. As I've already alluded to earlier, freedom of choice is such a gigantic feature in this game. There are so many ways to tackle every situation. For instance, the first time I had to take this bridge, I decided to just run in and solo it and just kill everything. Job done. My next playthrough, someone actually suggested getting a piece of equipment that would allow me to traverse underneath it. And I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. 2 different ways to tackle this bridge. Then I stumbled upon a small camp of soldiers, and all I had to do was go and fetch someone's toy rat, and now I've got a squadron of soldiers helping me storm the bridge. And this was just 3 of, I believe, 5 possible ways that I found to take this bridge. That is just one minor decision on one planet in the galaxy, and the game is filled with situations like this, truly filled with them. So by the end of your playthrough, your game will probably look entirely different to mine. You will have allied with different people, you will control different key resources, you will have killed different people, and that level of freedom means that the replayability value of this game is next level. There are now 3 more main topics that I really want to talk to you about, being combat, graphics and performance, and story and factions. But before that, let me finally talk to you about some of the negatives as well. Honestly, I might sound like a bit of a shill for saying this, but apart from the bugs, I don't really have any negatives to tell you. It's a great game. I had so much fun. I already cannot wait for my 3rd playthrough of this game. So much fun. The bugs, however, were rampant. Some of them were painful. I had multiple companions who had a speech bubble above their head for the entire playthrough because it constantly thought I had like an unread conversation with them, and that is just immersion breaking and annoying. A few times I had quest NPCs that just didn't spawn in or wouldn't talk to me, and I had to reload previous saves and tackle a quest in a different way to get that trigger to prompt. I had just little things like that throughout the game, weird audio issues, quests not being completable because I did them in the wrong order. As I say, the majority of this I have been promised has been fixed by the day 1 patch, but I need to say it just in case there is still some of it in the game by the time you get round to playing, because it was tough to grit my teeth and bear through at times, and it was sad because the rest of the game was magnificent in my opinion. Now, for the remaining positive points about The Outer Worlds 2, because there are oh so many positive things to say about this game. Firstly, it's not the most graphically gorgeous game I've ever played in my life, but I don't feel like it needs to be. It doesn't detract from the experience in any way. It's still a very pretty game to look at, it's just not the best in the world. And being that it doesn't feel like it needs to be the absolute most shit-hot, latest graphical advancement-y game ever in the world, means that they can keep the specifications lower, so it runs beautifully on all platforms. And that, to me, is far more important than being able to see my feet in the snow or the moss around the bottom of a rock. Next up, let's talk briefly about the different factions and characters you will encounter throughout the game, because even though I skipped a lot of the dialogue, I still had a really good grasp on the story, because despite how many moving parts and cogs there are, it's very easy to follow, and it's very fun to follow as well. There are some great factions and characters in this game. So the 4 main people that you'll be encountering and engaging with are Auntie's Choice, a new corporation formed after a somewhat hostile takeover of Spacer's Choice by Auntie Cleo. They now control a monopoly on 99.99% of all products sold across the galaxy, from pharmaceuticals to weapons to food and drinks to modifications and armor. Literally everything you could want, you name it, you have to buy through Auntie's Choice at a premium. Despite this, they are arguably the most sane and fair of the 4 factions, with very little crime, a really high drive to work and succeed, and much freedom for their subjects, provided they have the bits to pay for it. On the flip side, you have the Protectorate, an authoritarian military regime who prioritize stability and obedience over individual freedoms, primarily through the use of propaganda and something that they like to call mental refreshment, which is effectively New Age lobotomy. They despise Auntie's Choice and their capitalist approach to government, believing that all citizens should have food and medicine readily available. However, this comes at the cost of any kind of monetary compensation or freedom. As they say, order is peace, obedience is comfort. You will also encounter Sub Rosa. They are an underground network primarily made up of criminals, some low level, some high level. However, there's also a decent amount of regular folk here too, who don't really agree with the ideals of any of the other 3 reigning factions and would prefer to strike it out by themselves in the underworld. I found some of Sub Rosa's missions and interactions the most fun in the game, and I was devastated that they don't feature more heavily and I still don't know anywhere near as much about them as I would like to. I really wish they featured in more locations. And finally, before we move on to the combat section of the video, the last main faction you'll be interacting with are the Order of the Ascendant, who abide by nothing but the grand plan. They believe that every problem in the universe can be solved through a combination of mathematics and science, and they can spend decades deliberating over a problem until they believe they have calculated the exact perfect solution, before then moving on to the next problem. Their inaction can sometimes cause problems, but their system usually works surprisingly well. They are a fair and peaceful people, albeit with a few radical splinter cells who do cause absolute chaos now and again. Their main goal is to solve the ultimate problem and ascend humanity to a higher form of existence. And now for the final section of the video, the combat is very easy to grasp and deceptively in-depth. So much so that it is very easy to find yourself simply just shooting and slashing away, forgetting all of these other tools and options that the game has provided you. You have, for instance, 4 different gadgets that you can cycle between, depending on the situation. One of them will slow down time and allow you to get more headshots, and also has other abilities, depending on the perks and skills you've selected. Another will shield yourself with a force field. Again, this will get more powerful, depending on your gear and your perks. You also have your companions and their abilities. Companions I haven't really touched on in this video because I have a dedicated video coming out with a breakdown of all companions. So do make sure you check that out. The companions themselves are very weak unless you specialize in the leadership perk, but their abilities, however, crazy powerful, really good. You can use them periodically and they recharge quicker in combat as you're killing stuff, and they can absolutely turn the tide of any situation in an instant. Aside from your gadgets and your companions, you've obviously got your guns and your melee weapons as your main form of damage, along with lots of other things like grenades, mines, explosives, and distraction devices. All of this, along with the very extensive crafting and salvaging system in the game, make for a very varied and satisfying experience. And this, sorry, I should have said, this is only if you choose to go in all guns blazing. This is just combat. As I mentioned earlier, the real draw is the freedom of choice you get. So you can actually just go and stealth kill this whole camp if you've decided to spec into things like detection time and the stealth stat and awareness build up. Or you could go and hack all of the turrets from the main control panel and turn them against their friends. Or you could release a load of poison gas or freeze everything to death. Or even find a way to befriend everyone in some situations and simply avoid combat altogether. Honestly, I cannot oversell the variety you get in this game, and I'm so excited to show you all my full challenge playthrough so you can see how different my game will be from yours. With that, my friends, that's basically everything I had to say for you today on The Outer Worlds 2. It's an absolutely phenomenal game. Bugs aside, hopefully they'll all be fixed. Just fantastic. If you love an open world RPG, grab it. You will not be disappointed. And with that, all that's left for me to say is thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.